So just want to welcome everybody. And just a reminder, this is recorded, so you'll have a chance to go back and watch it later on. But want to just welcome everybody to our fifth session of our virtual SAGE and ACJS faculty development workshops. We've got 6 of these. This is number 5, and we're thrilled that everyone could be with us. Just want to introduce myself as well as some colleagues that many of you may know, and then obviously introduce the individual that's going to lead the workshop today. I'm Josh Perigo. I'm the acquisitions editor, and Brian, if you want to change slides, but I'm the acquisitions editor here at Sage Publications for Criminology and Criminal Justice. And then many of you probably know Jessica Miller. Maybe you have met her at conferences. You obviously got invites to this series of workshops early on from Jessica, so you saw communication from her. She's still with Sage. She's a sponsoring editor, and she works with me on this list as, among other things, many duties that she has here at Sage Publications. So just thrilled that you all could join us to engage a little bit more, engage with your students a little bit more, and learn from each other. I think that's one of the things that this is going to be all about, and these workshops have been all about. We've had terrific engagement so far with the previous 4, and I have no doubt number 5 is going to be just as exciting. And finally, I want to introduce, again, the person that's leading our discussion today and our workshop today. If you want to change slides, Brian. Brian is someone that I've had the privilege of knowing since about 2015. He's also someone that's really been instrumental in helping me with our criminal justice list, but obviously these workshops. He's been an integral part of helping us develop these, helping run these, and he's going to be running today's. Brian is the Vice Provost for Academic Affairs, as well as a professor in the Department of Sociology and Criminal Justice at Old Dominion University. He has a couple books with us, as you can see there on the screen, an introductory book, as well as a book called White Collar Crime, a Systems Approach, which actually just published, so we're excited to have that in print. But he's got a lot planned for us today. This is by no means a pitch for you to possibly adopt these books, though that would help. We'd appreciate it. But it's really about figuring out ways to help your students reach their goals and at the same time help you reach your goals as an instructor. So as I mentioned, Brian's got a lot planned for us this afternoon. Just a couple things to keep in mind. One is, and thank you all. I've seen everyone has their microphone on mute. If there's any reason for discussion, there's also going to be breakout rooms today that Brian's going to explain. You can obviously, be off mute for that. But while the presentation's going on, if you can just remember to keep your mic muted. The other thing is there's a chat functionality here in Zoom. I'm sure you're all aware of, but there's a chat functionality. I am going to monitor the chat as any questions come up, discussion points, things of that nature. Again, these workshops, the previous 4, have been loaded with questions, obviously, but also people sharing, hey, this is what works for me. This doesn't work, that sort of thing. Everybody can see that. So we all have a chance to be a community where we share, and that's what these really are designed for. And Brian may have, direct questions he wants you to answer or things to make comments on. That chat functionality is great. I'll monitor that. I'll make sure those questions get answered. And we address those things. So I'll be quiet now. Without further delay, here's Brian Payne.
Thanks, Joshua. I want to say how much I've enjoyed working with Joshua and Jessica on this on the SAGE ACJS faculty development seminar. This is I actually had presented in previous seminars or workshops, but they weren't ones that I was hosting. In fact, one of the first times I presented several years ago, and I pointed out was when my intro book had first come out, and I jokingly said, I'm not here to pitch my book. And then my very next slide was a picture of the book, but I am not here to do that. Here to talk about games that criminologists play. And this probably sounds a little more interesting, the title, than what we're actually be talking about. we'll be talking about how we bring games into our classroom. And I don't pretend to be an expert on the topic at all. I have played games in my classes and I've used games in different ways. And I'm here to have a conversation about what works with me, what has worked for me. We'll hear what works for you. And as Joshua said, we'll squeeze in a breakout where we'll try to develop our own games in a small group. And then we'll come back. And I do have a hard stop at 5, like many of you. This is the beginning of our semester, and I'm dressed like this because I got to run down the street and greet a bunch of freshmen. But so let's get right started. Joshua said that I would be inviting you to put things in the chat, and Joshua is going to watch the chat. And what I want to do is a quick SAGE ACJS quiz. And what I would invite you to do is whoever has answers to these 5 questions, put them in the chat. Now, what you'll notice is I didn't say they had to be the right answers. And I didn't say you had to answer all of them. I just said you had to put something in the chat. And so congratulations to Kirsten. You'll be getting an ODU shirt, and we'll get your contact information later to figure out where to send it to. Now, if you want to know the answers, our 2022 meeting is in Vegas. Journal of Criminal Justice Education is the journal question. SAGE was created in 1965, a year before I was born, and probably some of you. The presenters of the workshop, we've had many of them. And as you know, SAGE is headquartered in California. So what are we here to do today? We just played a game. Whether you realized it or not, we played a game. We had a rule which wasn't real clear because I didn't say that your answers had to be right. I just took whatever you had, but we did play a game. And our objectives today are to identify 5 different games that can be used in your courses, to develop a game for one of your classes when we do our breakout room, and then to explain why games are useful in your courses. So let's get started. What makes something a game? There's actually lots of research on games, and while we may play them, and when I was thinking about playing games, and again, as I said, I'm no expert. One of the things my family knows about me, my wife in particular, is the criminologist in me. Sometimes I cheat when I'm in a game. Now, that's not to say that criminologists are cheaters, but I figure out a way in Scrabble. Figured out a great way in Scrabble to break a rule. Now, if you think about Scrabble, you'll know that whenever you have a blank chip, it can count as any letter. Well, I realized when my wife and I were dating that I could just take an E and flip it over and it looked blank. And the only way she found out was one day there were like 18 blanks on the table or on the board, and she realized, oh, you've been cheating. Now, we're not talking again about the deviance part of games here, but we're talking about, games are they have rules, they have a purpose or a function, they're an activity, we're doing something, and one way or another, they're connected to the world, whether it's the virtual world or a direct connection. There's players in games, whether it's the decision maker or the contender. They're productive. There's getting from point A to point B. There's competition. When I said whoever is going to win, whoever answers the question first, those of you who are a bit competitive thought, I'm gonna go for it. And again, we had Kirsten win that competition. And there's goals and end conditions in a game. We know this is what it means to play the game. This is what it means to be victorious. Now, having said that, let's point out that, and many times games can be quite unstructured. So how do we define a game, what game means? And of course, this isn't one of those that we would use in our scholarly SAGE publication. If we're doing research on it, we're not gonna cite the Google definition of game, but we turn to it here, and what we see is that this definition of game is one that talks about playing. So playing is a game. Anytime we're playing, that is a game. And I say this because, in my view, it's understanding that games are playing. Games are forms of playing that's what makes games so useful in our classes. So why do games work? Playing is natural. I remember when I was an undergraduate learning from a professor, a drug class, and he presented research that showed one of the potential explanations about why people use drugs is because as children, we play and we learn to play and we love to play. And obviously we play differently today than we did when I was a kid, but we play is natural. And what this research supposedly shows is that as we grow older, we learn you're not supposed to play. You're supposed to be stuffy and official. Think about riding a swing set and how much you enjoyed as a kid riding a swing set. And I remember seeing once an adult by themselves riding a swing set several years ago, just all by themselves at the playground. And I had this thought like, that is really odd. And I thought back to my professor who said, no, it's not. It's natural to want to play. And again, we get socialized out of playing and we get socialized into being professional and playing by these structured rules that we've created for ourselves. When we play, there's something that happens in the brain where your brain clicks in, and I don't know the neuroscience behind it, but I know it changes our brain activity. Playing is also a form of active learning. And as a form of active learning, there's a body of research, a large body of research that shows how much more we learn from being active consumers of the knowledge and producers of the knowledge than simply receiving knowledge. And I would also point out that games are stories. And any game we think about, there's a story behind that game, and we like stories. And then games are fun. So the types of games, I mean, you know this, we ask you to list all the types of games you can think of. You would talk about things like board games, like the Scrabble, like the Challenge, like Monopoly, and so on. The quiz that we did at the very beginning, again, something I do. Is not working again?
No, I just want to share your so they don't see all of this. I'm sorry. That just makes it easier to say. Sorry.
Okay. Thank you. The role playing is a game, and we do that in criminal justice, whether it's mock trials or something like that. But those are games. There's computer aided games. Obviously, our younger folks, my son in particular, and probably many of yours, are into those kinds of games. There's interactive games. There's where we tell people to create. And that's what we're going to do in just a few minutes. And so why do we do this? We bring games into our classes to break the ice, to reduce isolation, to bring our students together. Sometimes I'll use games to introduce the material and bring out the ideas at the beginning of class. Other times I'll use games to review material before an exam, bring in games to promote experiential learning, which we know again is a way that students learn much more and become much more attached to their curriculum and their program. And also it helps to bring material to life. So what I'm going to do now is just share with you a number of different games based upon this idea that these games are fun, they're simple, they're focused on learning, and they're intentional. And if the games can meet that criteria, if they can be fun, simple, focused on learning, and intentional, that's what I see as being good games that are brought into criminal justice. Some of these I've played, others I've had colleagues that they use. One in particular that one of my colleagues uses, and these details are in the Google slide deck, is my colleague Mona Danner found a game that others had used, and she crafted into her own game for a social inequality class, where essentially, I'm going to sum it up rather quickly here. if you played Monopoly before, you know that you all start with the same amount of money and you all start in the very same spot. And then you play the Monopoly game all starting from the very same spot. Well, what if you play and you start with different amounts of money and wealth, like we do in the real world? What if your Monopoly game starts with certain people being less powerful, having less resources than others, and then you play that game based upon those different starting points? And what Mona has, and I have the link there on the document to Paul's Justice page, she has a number of different types of questions that she has students answer. And this is the intentional part. It's not just about playing Monopoly and we all, hey, you won and you get the little trophy. But after the game, she has students write their reactions to being a part of a stratified society. And there's a number of different questions she has them answer, and she studied it, the learning that happens from this, and the ability of the students to actually see and feel, albeit momentarily, what it means to have power and not have power certainly resonates with students. Somewhat similarly, I've created a game that I've used in my violence classes and my domestic violence classes that is called Understanding Why Battered Women Go Back. And what it is we divide into groups of 4 or 5, and I've printed off these game boards that I've created, and I also printed off 100 cards that had either a fact about domestic violence on it, or the card had a reason that women return to the battering situation, because the research shows that they will leave eventually, but it takes a while. Leaving is a process, and there's many reasons why women return to those situations. And in fact, when we play the game, we talk about the question of why do we even ask why women don't leave? Why don't we ask, why doesn't he leave if he's the abuser? And so we have those kind of conversations, but what students have said, and we've assessed this and evaluated it, at least in the short term, they get a deeper insight into the reasons it is so difficult to leave a violent situation. They run out of rent, their family tells them to go back, the shelter says you can't have a boy here, all sorts of reasons. And what I should have explained a little bit more, the students, the groups, they get a dot, they get some dice, they roll their dice, they move their little play person, and then they pick a card. If the card's a fact about domestic violence, they stay where they are, and then they go again when it's their turn. If it's something that says like he threatened to kill you if you leave him, you've seen his temper and believe him, go back home, you move your piece back to the home spot. They play and play and play, and eventually some of the students make it all the way through. There's actually a card in the middle of there that says you're safe, go to the safety spot, so that they can at least make it through. But again, the point here isn't about the game and winning the game, but it's about learning why it's so hard to leave these situations. At the end, we have the students get in groups and talk about the content on the cards, and talk about whether they believe it or not, whether they accept it. And not everyone does, but again, it opens their eyes to these discussions. I've also used Jeopardy quite a few times in my classes, and maybe you have as well. They're out there, the PowerPoints that can create the scene of a Jeopardy game, and I've included them in the resource section of the Google Doc. Very easy to set up. I use them myself when we're reviewing for exams. I break the chapters down, 1 chapter per question or per category. And again, simple to create. The way I do it, and it's worked, is I pick 3 people from the class to represent the rest of the class, or groups of the class. So we'll have 3 groups. We have 3 people that represent each group, and those 3 people go to the front of the room, and then they play Jeopardy on behalf of the rest of the class. And then I tell them whoever gets the most Jeopardy points, that group's going to get 2 extra points on their test. Whoever gets the second most gets a point and the others are loser. Now what happens? I end up giving everyone the points because their grade shouldn't be based upon who got picked to represent them. But still, it's it brings out discussion that we don't get when I stand in front of them and talk about this is what you should be studying for your exam. Then I put this in their Blackboard and they have it for review. And again, we get good feedback. Another one comparable, and it's included in the materials. You can set up the $100,000 pyramid game with criminal justice content, or any content, obviously, for that matter. Family Feud would be another one, and this one's included in the resources we've included. I don't know if that sound made it, but let's imagine we have the question of what types of techniques of neutralization do you think were used in a particular research project? And then the students would have to say which types were used. And we'd go through and you'd have the teams and they'd be guessing. Again, it'd be active and they would be having this competition, but also thinking about the content and hopefully learning it. Now, another example, I've not done this one, but I had a professor that did, is he would have his classes in criminal investigation actually do a mock investigation, but a little bit different than some of the others is he would write the crime to be something that related to the department faculty. So someone stole my book. Now all of the suspects were the faculty in the department. And then the students would have to go around to the faculty in the department and interview them to figure out which one of them stole the professor's book. And at one point they had to pull it back a little because one of the students did an illegal search, violated the Fourth Amendment, and they learned, I suppose. But again, getting students to actively do something based upon a very simple example that was provided. Another game that we've seen in our criminal justice courses is I just call it Broadway or Bust. In this case, I was playing a game with another professor where the game was we had to read this article and then we had to, with the article, write a Broadway play or production about the article. And this article happened to be about professors getting along with their chairs and conflict that happens. And we had to create the puppets and then we had to put on the puppet show. It was a ton of fun. Now, obviously, I didn't know the picture was being taken at that moment, but I embrace it and celebrate it. And again, the playing, the active learning was something that we wouldn't have had we just stood and said, yeah, this article was about XYZ. This is what they learned. This is what it means. It's the students actually creating the knowledge and telling us what it means. Another one that I play in my classes is I'll find them a blank comic strip. And let's do this one real quick. Whoever in chat can say they want to do it, can tell us what words would you put in this, either of these comic strips to talk about criminal justice. Anyone want to give it a shot? We'll give you an ODU t-shirt. Waiting for the chat. Put it on the spot. I'd say raise your hand, but I can't see everyone. All right, so we have a question. Yeah, let's just do it like this. Gabriella asked, who are you choosing criminal justice as your major? Jeff said, instead of answering that question, said, I'm really sorry I committed my crime. And then Allison very astutely says, let's talk about cybercrime. And the question, when we talk about cybercrime that Jeff asked or answered was, do you know the pain you caused? Now we could go, actually, I thought about doing it like this, where one person says something and then another one responds, and then another one responds to that. And again, it's playing and it's thinking about what we know and sharing that knowledge. Let's share another example of a quick, easy game. And maybe you've done this one, where we take a word and we say, we got the word crime, use the letters of the word crime to, in this case, I said, create the names of 5 games. And we're not going to actually create the names of the 5 games here, but imagine, again, any topic you have, use the word crime to identify 5 different criminological theories that come to mind. And you start with conflict theory, and or 5 different concepts about theory. You start with conflict theory, you talk about ritualists, talk about innovators, you talk about Merton, you talk about the E I'm getting stuck on, but again, it's just the idea of thinking and getting students to do these things. And they will quickly, whether it's the beginning or end of class, tell them we're going to do something, we're going to play a game, they liven up. Another one I do is I find a crime that was reported by the environmental crime. Excellent. Thank you, Steve. A crime that was reported in the media, and I pull out the names and the sentence and I give it to the students, and I sometimes will put them in groups, sometimes have them work alone, and I ask them to figure out, and this is kind of like The Price is Right, ask them to figure out what sentence did this offender get, and whoever comes the closest without going over wins a prize. Now we want them to explain what sentence they thought they would give, how it relates to what they've read, how it relates to the lectures and modules, again, trying to give some intent to it. And then hopefully they're not Googling it and finding it in the news and then, using my Scrabble cheating strategy and getting the answer that way. Again, especially in groups, it gets them together and talk about the content. But when we add in I've done group projects before where I just tell them to do it, and those are fine, they work well. But when I add in you're going to win something, for whatever reason, they latch on a little bit more to that. Scavenger hunts, you've probably done these, or some of you have. If not, an excellent, especially if an online class, I've found these to be quite helpful at the beginning of the class, to tell them to go out and find these things online and come back and show me that you've found these things online. In-person class, we might send students around to the department, getting to know people. Now here, what I would suggest is, if you do an in-person scavenger hunt, make sure your colleagues agree to it. We've got a professor on campus that sends everyone to the library to get a picture with a librarian, and the librarians hate it. They're like, you get a picture with yourself. We don't want your students coming in and doing selfies with us. But again, just a thought about a way to get students out and about. Now, my favorite game, though, is to tell the students, you create a game. To put on the syllabus, I could have them write a paper, I could have them do a research review, and I do some of that still. But for my cybercrime game in particular, I say, you create a game that teaches people about cybercrime. It gets their creative juices going. It's fun. I put them in groups and they talk about teamwork and problem solving and all of these benefits that we say we want our students to learn come out of the creative aspect of creating the game. But what we also do with our in-person class is, the last week of class, we come back and we play the games. So they're learning about the game, they're learning how to create the game, but they're also learning about what the other students do. Now, I will warn, the very first time I did it, I got some duds. They just threw something together and it was not creative at all. Once I threw together and realized, oh, they need a rubric, then I got better content. So when I created the rubric and said, these are the things I want your games to have, I wanted to, content from class, at least 25 things if you want an A. And again, just being more clear in my expectations, that definitely helped quite a bit. So I said, creating a game is my favorite thing to do. Let's create a game. And There was a question, I'll answer the question first, adopting the games. You don't need my permission. When you go to the links that I provided, those games actually had are open access, and they've granted permission to use those games. Anything I've shown here are ones that have been granted open access to, so I don't see any issues there. So let's spend, Mary Jo, let's put us in some, what we're going to do is we're going to go into breakout rooms, and there will be 4 of you in a breakout room. And what we want you to do is to create a game about professional development. And we're going to give the winners, each of the winners of the group, a t-shirt. Again, we got a competition there. And your game that we want it to do is to have a game that will teach people about professional development, about their career goals and their strengths and weaknesses. Now, Zoom room, we're going to put you in groups of 4. Whoever, what we want you to start with doing is to have someone to, each of you announce when your birthday is, and whoever has the most, whoever's birthday is next gets to pick who the group leader is. And they can either accept it themselves or they can pick someone else in the Zoom room. But again, just getting you to talk here, you share your birthday, you decide who the Zoom leader is, and then you have the discussion. And then when we come out of the Zoom room in 15 minutes or so, that either that leader who is the birthday leader or assign someone else to be the leader will tell us what game you created. So we're going to give this a shot. Mary Jo, my assistant, is going to put you in the Zoom rooms, and we'll see what happens. All right, so I hope I was in a group and we came up with what I thought was a great idea, but I'll wait and I'll go last to share it. I said maybe if we win, it would be an example of white collar crime, because it'd be like the one deciding who won, and but I told him we probably won't win. So I don't know who was in which group, but I know we had I think at least 7 or 8 groups. So does anyone want to volunteer to share their group first?
Okay.
Yep, go ahead.
We were in group, this is Cheryl. We were in group 1 and room 1, I should say. And the idea that we had is for the strengths and weaknesses was a chutes and ladders type idea, where your strength would be the ladder going up and the chute would be the weakness going down. And each individual item that we found would give you a certain number of spaces up or a certain number of spaces down. Strengths would be if you published research, you had a supportive significant other, you got a grant that came through, your education, certain number of spaces for a master's, even more for a PhD, technology courses to improve your own awareness of technology, and also if you received any awards from any professional organizations within our discipline. Weaknesses would be budgetary constraints, an authoritative chair member who you may not get along with, a lack of technical knowledge within the field or within the type of technology used within the field, negative student evaluations for your teaching, HR issues which students may bring, as well as if you potentially use offensive or inappropriate language which a student may or may not appreciate.
Or you post about them on the Facebook.
Yeah.
Excellent, very good, very creative, and we will. I hadn't thought about how we're going to decide which group wins, but I'll figure that out by the time we get to the next. So great, Cheryl. Thank you for room 1. Anyone from room 2 want to go? And I don't know what room I was in, so whoever wants to go next, hop right in.
I can go next. I don't know what room we were in, but two, we were in two. Thanks, Gabriel. So what we came up with for a game was to do just like a beginning lesson on professional affiliations, what those are, and then to send our students out to talk to professors on campus and bring back a list of professional affiliations that the professors were affiliated with. And what we would do is the student who contacted the most professional affiliations would win, obviously. And the way that they would present their list is in no more than a 2-page document, basically showing the different affiliations that they came up with, and what that affiliation does for the professional development in the discipline that they're in. So what we did is we said, we're not going to make this discipline specific. So even though we're in criminology and criminal justice, this could be from professors in any discipline. And what we decided was that the winner, and we would present this up front, the winner would get 5% of extra credit. And what we wouldn't tell the students is that all students would receive 2% of extra credit, but we'd tell them that after the assignment was done.
Excellent, very good. Now I realized as Steve was talking, I thought, now I know how we'll decide who wins. We're going to ask you all to vote at the end. So we had Cheryl with Chutes and Ladders, Steve with the professional affiliation. So who wants to go next? Any of the other groups want to put theirs in for?
I can go for group 6.
All right, go ahead, Allison.
We were still kind of in the creative stages of it. So I'm adding a little bit. I sent some chats to my group members and hopefully they're okay with it. But and we tailored this towards students. So we talked about, when we ask students, what are you generally going into? We kind of split it up to like 5 main categories. And we're going to put the categories on the board, and then students are going to go to the category that they think best fits what their career goals are. And so we end up with basically 5 different groups. And one of the groups, would be in corrections, and the other one would be in courts. And then we would kind of split that up into like prosecuting and defense. And then we would have a list of the different types of jobs that are available in each one of those. And then students could talk about, okay, this is the one that seems to fit me. And then we would do kind of like a mix and match game and talk about the strengths and the weaknesses, not as an individual, but kind of as a whole. Okay, what is the strength that would allow me to do this job? And then we would have kind of on the board, if people, I don't know if people remember kind of like the mix and match game where you turn up a word and then you turn it back and there's like 12 or 13 words. And then if you find that word again, and then the group that finds 3 of the same word that are basically the strengths of this particular job wins. So you have 5 different teams competing and finding, for example, like perseverance. So it would be, oh, that's the top strength identified by this group. And we found that 3 times. So it kind of, looks at the main, strengths that are associated with a specific type of job, and then also kind of combines that. We're still kind of in the creative sessions of it. We'll be copywriting it and sending you all out, a better explanation. But that's sort of kind of where we were going with it.
Perfect. Allison's, we'll call yours the match game. So we had Allison's match game, Steve's professional affiliation, Cheryl's Chutes and Ladders. Who else wants to share one? I'll share my team. So Jessica, do you want to share yours?
We can share ours. We're also similar to Allison, kind of still in the discussion phase of this. And ours was similar in some ways, but we had this aimed more at like a faculty level. And so we talked about kind of maybe brainstorming, potentially in groups, like brainstorming some strengths and weaknesses towards the goals of tenure and promotion, having those basically put into separate buckets, a strengths bucket, a weaknesses bucket, and then having people draw from each bucket and opening the discussion up more broadly, and having whoever draws it asks the rest of the individuals to define it, and then discuss what that might look like, or how something like publishing being within the strengths bucket, how you even get there, right? Or what publishing as a strength towards tenure and promotion looks like, etc. So basically like groups brainstorming and then kind of bringing it all together in discussion. We went off of that simple game approach, keeping it a little more simple.
So we'll call it brainstorming tenure and promotion development. Does that work? I actually thought of never have I ever. Could you imagine playing that with your colleagues? Never have I ever hated my chair. And people like be looking around, and that might be kind of fun to do. All right, anyone else want to?
I feel like that would only be fun if you're already tenured. I just wanted to throw that out.
It'd be more fun as a tenured professor. Absolutely. Anyone else want to share theirs? I will share my groups, and then if others want to do theirs. So far we have Cheryl's Chutes and Ladders, Steve's professional affiliation, Allison's mix and match game, Jessica's brainstorming, tenure and promotion development. My group talked about, and it's kind of like a match game too, but we'll call ours departmental match game. And what we talked about was essentially, it's more, we had a couple of ideas that we talked about. I'm just going to share one of them. Would be, let's imagine that in our department, if we're a graduate, or we're developing graduate students, if we had pictures of all of our faculty in our department, like our match cards, and then we had facts about each of them, like published this many articles, was a first person in their family to go to college, former police officer, former prosecutor, did time in jail, I mean, whatever. And you flip the card over, and then you flip the picture over, and you're trying to match the person with the facts, and then the students would have conversations about their own professional development, where they want to go, what their strengths are, what their weaknesses are, how they're going to get there. And Cheryl, it came from a great example that Cheryl gave, where Cheryl gives students a bunch of pictures, like 30 pictures, and she tells them, these are all criminals. What is it that makes them look like criminals? And they would, from a biological perspective, talk about why they look like criminals, but then she'd point out half of them work in criminal justice. And then people realize, oh, that biological theory isn't so great after all, and then labeling theory. But anyway, so we took that and went with the professional development one. We'll call our group the departmental match game. And so anyone else want to share theirs before we vote? We're going to ask you to vote in Zoom. And so we have, and we'll call it Chutes and Ladders, professional affiliation, mix and match was Allison's game, brainstorming, tenure and promotion, and departmental match would be the fifth game. So if you can put in Zoom which one you think should win, and then we'll see who won this game. And you're allowed to vote for your own. It reminds me, Jeff's question reminds me of why is the provost put the dean in charge of the budget? So everybody will talk to them. So my quick math. Lois wants to know if everybody gets a shirt. If I had enough of them to give, I would. But my quick math, Mary Jo, does it look like it's Chutes and Ladders? Mary Jo had another job. She may have left me. He's like, why do you make me do this? Anyone counting faster than me? I think it's Chutes and Ladders. So Chutes and Ladders team, if Cheryl, if you could let me know everyone that was on the team, I'm gonna, or put in the chat that you were on Chutes and Ladder, then I'll reach out to you to see where I send you my ODU shirt. And I did have one last slide that I'm not going to go to since I've gone over time. I used the word game and said what games should be. Games should be creative, reliable, integrative learning objectives, mysterious, and evaluated regularly. If you paid attention, that spelled crime. But they, again, fun is a way to bring into our courses. This is, again, it's included in that Google Doc that's shown there. And the Google Doc has the resources. It also has an announcement about ACJS Trivia Night, where you can do more games at ACJS if you go to Vegas. Sorry, I had the snafus with Zoom. I promise I've used Zoom before, but never had these issues, especially when it's being recorded. But hope you're able to join us in the next session, and you'll be seeing more about that. Joshua, did you want to say anything else?
Hey, I just wanted to thank everybody for attending today and your participation. What will happen from here on is you'll get announcements about the final presentation, which takes place in September, I believe September 21st. So watch out for that invite. Also, in that original invite, when I send you the one for September, it will include the link to the video for today's presentation. So you'll have that. It will also it will include a link where you go to complete your registration for attendance today. So actually that's in your original invite, the link for that. You'll go to SurveyMonkey, complete your registration for today. I'll be notified. I'll email you your certificate for today. So that stuff is yet to go. And then the final thing is Brian's going to share with me his slide presentation and the Google slides for today. And if you've emailed, some of you've emailed me already and I appreciate it, but if you want to email me, my email address is in this chat, but it's joshua.perigo, Perigo, @sagepub.com. Just let me know if you want the slide presentation, and Brian and I will get that out to you as well.
Great. Well, thank you all. And I hope you all have a great semester, start of your semester. I hope that this was helpful and that you get to play as many games as you desire in the upcoming semester. So hope I'll see you next month as well. So have a great rest of the week.